Nate had always thought cemeteries were peaceful, quiet, empty, full of stories no one could tell. As a freelance photographer, he wasn't picky about work, and when the Historical Preservation Society offered a generous fee to document aging grave sites, he didn't hesitate. Money was tight, and the job seemed easy. The cemetery was sprawling, its iron gates creaking like tired lungs as he pushed them open. Rows of crumbling headstones stretched out under a pale gray sky. The air was heavy, the kind that clung to your skin and whispered in your ear. Nate set up his camera and began his work, capturing the names etched into stone, the moss creeping over forgotten memories. It wasn't until he reviewed the photos that the unease set in. The first few shots were as expected, weathered gravestones against a dull backdrop of skeletal trees. But in one frame, just beyond the curve of an angel statue, a faint figure stood. It wasn't clear, just a shadow shaped like a man, his head tilted unnaturally to the side. Nate frowned, zooming in. The figure wasn't there when he took the shot. He would have noticed. Rushing it off as a trick of the light, he kept shooting. But the shadows persisted. Each photo revealed more figures, hazy at first, like smudges on the lens. Then clearer. A woman in a tattered dress stood near a tombstone, her eyes dark voids that seemed to stare directly at him. A child crouched by a grave, his hands clutching the earth as if trying to dig something up. Nate's unease turned to dread when he realized the figures were getting closer. On the third day, he arrived early, determined to finish and never return. The cemetery felt different now, like it was holding its breath. He kept glancing over his shoulder, the camera feeling heavier in his hands. Snap, snap, snap. He worked quickly, avoiding the angel statue where he first saw the figure. When he checked his camera's display, his stomach dropped. They were there, dozens of them, their forms sharper now. Their faces gone, hollow, eyes sunken but fixated. And in the final frame, one figure stood directly behind him, a man with a face like wax melting in the sun. He spun around, but the path was empty, just graves and silence. Nate packed his gear and fled, leaving behind unfinished work and the uneasy feeling that he was being watched. That night, he couldn't bring himself to review the photos again, but the camera stayed on his desk, its lens pointed at the bed. When he woke in the middle of the night, the room was cold, and the camera was clicking on its own. Snap, snap, snap. Nate's hand shook as he picked it up. The display showed the last image it had taken, his own sleeping face. And behind him, the wax-faced man smiled.